There is a moment, if you have ever landed at Boston Logan International Airport on a clear New England afternoon, when the city reveals itself through the aircraft window in a way that few American airports can match. The harbor glittering below, the skyline of one of America's oldest and most consequential cities rising in the distance. Boston is a city that carries its history visibly, in its architecture, in its streets, in its institutions. And for years, Terminal E, the international gateway through which hundreds of thousands of visitors arrived, was telling the wrong story. It was telling a story of a global city that had not kept pace, offering international travelers an arrival experience that belonged to an earlier era, while the rest of the world's great airports raced aggressively forward. The comparison with what was being built in Dubai, in Singapore, in London, in New York, was increasingly uncomfortable for a city of Boston's global standing and economic weight. That story is now being rewritten. Boston just committed $2 billion to make sure of it. The result is one of the most visually striking and operationally ambitious terminal expansions currently open anywhere in the United States. Welcome. In this video, we go inside the full reality of Boston Logan's Terminal E overhaul, the architectural choices, the engineering behind the new gates, the security and customs modernization, and the harder questions that $2 billion cannot fully answer. Because Boston built something genuinely impressive here. But impressive and sufficient are not always the same thing. Stay with us until the end, because the most important part of this story is what happens when New England winter arrives and the pressure on this airport reaches its annual, unrelenting peak. Boston Logan occupies one of the most constrained sites of any major American airport. Surrounded on multiple sides by Boston Harbor and hemmed in by one of the densest urban environments in the northeastern United States, Logan has essentially no room to expand its physical footprint. The airport cannot add runways. It cannot push its perimeter outward. Every improvement has to happen within the envelope it already occupies, meaning every dollar spent on terminal modernization operates within physical constraints that no amount of money can simply purchase away. This geographical reality is the defining fact of everything that follows in this story, and it shapes what the $2 billion investment can and cannot accomplish. For most of its history, Terminal E reflected those constraints more than it overcame them. The facility was functional but aging, cramped in the ways that matter most to international travelers, and increasingly out of step with what Boston's global economic profile demanded. Boston is a city of world-class universities, major financial institutions, leading biotech and pharmaceutical companies, and a cultural identity that attracts international visitors from across Europe and Asia. The terminal greeting those visitors was not matching the city's ambitions. Something had to change, and the Massachusetts Port Authority eventually concluded that the scale of change required was measured in billions, not in millions of incremental upgrades. The most striking and immediately visible change is the roof, and it announces itself from the moment you step outside the terminal. The new Terminal E roof sweeps across the expanded footprint in a continuous curve that gives the building a genuine sense of motion and ambition from the outside. What makes it memorable is its color. The roof is finished in a distinctive crimson red, a proprietary paint formulation that interacts with the particular quality of northeastern coastal light in a way that makes the building look different at 7 in the morning than at midday or at dusk. The crimson shifts and deepens depending on angle, cloud cover, and season, giving the terminal a visual identity that is both unmistakably Boston, a city whose most beloved institutions wear that color, and genuinely unique in the landscape of American airport architecture. This is not decoration for its own sake. The architectural identity of a terminal is part of its competitive positioning. In a world where airports increasingly compete for routes, airlines, and the discretionary decisions of high-value passengers, A terminal that people recognize and associate with a specific place carries real commercial value. Boston's crimson roof is a statement. This city takes its international gateway seriously and is committed to saying so at a scale that is visible from the approach path on a clear day. The core operational upgrade is the addition of 4 brand new international gates, built with dual-deck jet bridges, a configuration that allows an aircraft to be boarded simultaneously at 2 levels, dramatically accelerating the loading and unloading of large, wide-body aircraft on long-haul international routes. This configuration is specifically engineered to accommodate the largest commercial aircraft currently in service, including the Airbus A380 and the Boeing 777 family. An airport that cannot physically accommodate these aircraft at its international gates is effectively excluded from the world's highest-value long-haul routes. Terminal E's new gate infrastructure removes that exclusion entirely. New England is home to one of the highest concentrations of internationally mobile travelers in the United States. Academics, business travelers, biotech professionals, students at world-renowned universities, and tourists moving between Boston and destinations across Europe and Asia. The ability to serve those travelers on direct, high-capacity routes without forcing connections through New York or Philadelphia is a competitive advantage with real economic consequences for the entire region. Every additional direct international route that Terminal E can attract represents revenue, employment, and connectivity for the New England economy at large. Inside the terminal, the expansion has addressed the areas where the passenger experience was most visibly deficient. The TSA security checkpoints have been completely rebuilt, with modern equipment and lane configurations designed for the throughput demands of a busy international terminal in the current travel environment. The customs processing halls have been expanded and streamlined, reducing the bottleneck that international arrivals frequently experienced in the old facility. New duty-free retail zones and airline lounges have been integrated into the terminal footprint, giving Terminal E the commercial amenity environment that international travelers arriving in Boston have every right to expect from a gateway to one of America's most prosperous and globally connected metropolitan areas. These improvements represent a genuine and substantial upgrade. The terminal today is meaningfully better, more spacious, more modern, more capable of handling high volumes of international traffic with a quality of experience that matches the city it serves than what existed before the $2 billion investment. And yet the constraints that define Logan Airport do not disappear because Terminal E is more beautiful and more functional. They remain fixed and immovable, and they shape what the expansion can and cannot accomplish over the long term. The most fundamental of those constraints is the runway system. Boston Logan's runway configuration is essentially fixed by the geography of the site. The harbor surrounds the airport on multiple sides. There is no room to add runways. The number of aircraft movements the airport can accommodate per hour is bounded by what the existing runways can process. Terminal E's new gates can accommodate larger and more numerous aircraft. But if the runway system cannot support the additional movements that filling those gates would require, the gates cannot reach their full operational potential. It is a ceiling that no terminal renovation, however expensive, can raise. When weather reduces the number of runways available, which in Boston, where nor'easters and winter storms are a reliable feature of the operational calendar, happens with significant frequency every single year, the gap between terminal capacity and runway capacity becomes acutely visible. Passengers inside the beautiful new Terminal E may find themselves waiting for departure clearances the runway system cannot immediately provide, regardless of how efficiently the terminal is processing them. The winter stress test is, for Boston Logan, not a theoretical exercise. It is an annual reality. New England winters bring conditions: heavy snow, ice, low visibility, high winds off the harbor. that directly affect airport operations. The new terminal is a vastly more comfortable place to wait out a weather delay than the old one. But comfort during a delay is not the same as avoiding it. The financial dimensions of the expansion also carry questions worth examining. The $2 billion investment was financed through the Massachusetts Port Authority, using a combination of revenue bonds and federal infrastructure funding. The debt service on those bonds is carried by the revenues the airport generates, primarily through fees charged to airlines for landing, gate use, and terminal operations. If actual construction costs pushed beyond original estimates, a pattern that has characterized major airport construction projects across the country in recent years, the mechanism for recovering those costs flows through the charges Massport assesses to airlines, which eventually reach passengers as higher ticket prices. For a market like Boston, where travelers have real alternative departure points in Providence, Manchester, and New York, sustained upward pressure on Logan. Ticket prices carries genuine risk of diverting passengers and routes to competing facilities. What the Terminal E expansion ultimately delivers is a Boston airport that can compete for international routes in a way the old facility could not. The crimson roof is the symbol of that ambition. The dual-deck jet bridges are the operational infrastructure of it. The modernized security and customs processing is the passenger experience of it. Together, they represent a meaningful improvement in what Boston offers the world when the world arrives at its door. The real test is whether it all performs as promised. When the weather turns hard, the gates are full, and the runways are running at their absolute limit, with no margin for delay. Drop a comment below. Have you seen Boston's new red terminal yet? And do you think $2 billion was the right bet for New England aviation? Like, subscribe to Mega Airport Works, and stay with us as we track the biggest mega projects on Earth.